You've made it. You've arrived at an important moment in your Skillwork journey, the day of your first interview. Now, up to this point, you've probably completed all of the testing sent to you by your recruiter, and you've had an opportunity to discuss with them a few options about jobs available to you. Once you decide which job and facility are best for you, your recruiter and our delivery coordinator, or DC for short, will submit your information to the facility for further review. And once they've had an opportunity to review your information, they are able to request an interview. And during this interview, you'll have the chance to meet some of the team members you could be working with and ask questions and, of course, answer theirs. Now, the Skillwork delivery coordinator that you've been working with will introduce you and set up the interview and then be present on the interview, but it will be primarily facilitated by the facility. And then after the interview, that delivery coordinator will be crucial in getting the feedback to your recruiter. We do our best to present you to these companies as a highly qualified candidate for their open positions, but ultimately, nailing the interview will rest entirely with you. And this is where the real fun begins. The first step that you need to do before you get on your interview is get connected. You've landed your interview, congratulations, but before that can ever begin, we've got some important information to share with you, and you're going to want to remember this. All of our interviews are conducted virtually using a video platform called Microsoft Teams. If you aren't familiar with Microsoft Teams, it's very similar to Zoom or other virtual meeting spaces, and you'll want to make sure that you've gone to the App Store and downloaded Teams onto your phone or your laptop or your desktop computer, whatever you're using for the interview. And there are different versions available for these different things, so want to make sure that you get the right version for whatever device you're going to use. Now, the next step in your pre-interview process is just testing all of your equipment. Now, the hard work of doing your standardized testing is behind you, but now we need to make sure that we test your connection, your camera, your microphone, and make sure all of that is working properly before you show up in the interview room with the client. There's nothing worse than showing up to an interview and having technical issues with your sound or your picture. It just makes for a really awkward moment for everyone, and we want to avoid that as much as we possibly can. And in order to avoid that, your recruiter will schedule a brief test of Teams with you on the day prior to your interview. This test will just take 3 to 5 minutes, and its sole purpose is just to make sure that we can see you, that we can hear you, and if at all possible, the test should happen in the same area you will be located when you're doing your interview and on the same device. This just lessens the chance of any technical issues that could come up on the day of your interview. Get ahead of this stuff early with your recruiter so that you can work through troubleshooting together. Now it's time to talk about the tips for success for performing well in your interview. You've got your equipment up and running, your mic is good, your camera is good, and it's time for your main event, and you're one interview away from securing a position with Skillwork. And we could not be more excited for you, and I'm going to share with you some of our secrets for nailing the interview and landing the job. These are suggestions that come straight from our seasoned recruiting staff, and they have proven to be highly effective in getting our candidates job offers. So please consider all of these as you approach your interview. We have found that our most successful interview candidates do 3 things. Number 1, they dress appropriately. Experts say 55% of first impressions are made by what an interviewer sees, 38% by what they hear, and 7% of the impression is made up by what you actually say. And we know that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but that is just what's happening, especially in a digital interview. Now, you don't need to wear a suit and tie, but just come dressed in a clean shirt, free from any distracting words or images, maybe a nice polo, or if you've got something similar. Take a comb through your hair, wash your face, just make sure you're presentable. I know I've seemed like your mom right now, and this seems a little trivial, but trust me, this stuff matters to a future employer, and the way that you present yourself displays a level of professionalism and will help set you up with a good first impression. The second tip for success is to make sure that you are distraction-free. The place where you're interviewing should be well lit, free from any background noise or distracting things around you. Also, make sure that you remain seated or at least still throughout the course of your interview. A shaky camera or walking around with your phone is just distracting and a little awkward. Also consider, what is your camera looking at? Make sure that you don't have your pet behind you, regardless of how cute they might be. Just be in a very distraction-free environment when you sit down to do your interview. We can, through Teams, set a little background behind you, work with your recruiter, and you can figure out how to use this feature. The third tip for nailing your interview is to ask good questions and make consistent eye contact. Now, a virtual interview is convenient, but it doesn't always have quite the same impact as being in person, right? Like, one way you can improve this is to look directly at your computer's camera. The temptation, I do this all the time, is just look at your own image or look at the image of the person interviewing you. But that sometimes gives the appearance that you're kind of distracted. So just make eye contact with the interviewer, or in this case, look at your camera. I know it seems weird, and you don't have to be weird and stare directly at it the whole time, but you can practice this with your recruiter the day before if you'd like. And then, as in any interview, be sure to always have at least 2 or 3 good questions to ask at the end of the interview. This just demonstrates a level of care and preparation as you sit down with your future employer. We have found that our most successful candidates avoid doing these things during an interview. Number 1, they do not show up late. Showing up last minute, or even worse, a couple of minutes late, does not communicate to the interviewer that you have prioritized this opportunity. And it can throw you off as you're looking to put your best foot forward and represent yourself in the best way possible. Being late is just not a good look in front of someone who's about to offer you a job. Second, please avoid using any profanity or excessive use of slang. Maintain a very professional mode of communication as you sit down for your interview. Number 3, good interviewees don't misrepresent their skills. If you can't do something or don't have the knowledge to answer a certain question that's asked of you, it's okay. Just say it. Own what you can do and what you can't do. It does no one any good for you to fabricate or exaggerate your skill set. It may even put you and others in danger in the future. Think of the safety implications of a seemingly innocent white lie could have in an actual facility. A hiring manager will respect your honesty and appreciate your limitations. Some may even be willing to provide a measure of training or coaching up on the job. But first, they need to have an accurate benchmark of your abilities. So the bottom line is, always be truthful about the level of technician that you are. Unless you are directly asked a question about your compensation by the hiring manager, leave this topic to be handled by the hiring parties. Through conversations with your recruiter prior to this point, you'll have already come to an agreed upon wage request that will be communicated to the interviewer. So even though it may be tempting, don't take this opportunity to negotiate. Commit to your prior wage request and just don't bring it up in the interview. All right, that's everything you need to know about successful interviewing at Skillwork. We are here for you. We believe in you. We know that you're going to do great and land this job. Good luck.